Hey guys, how's it going? It's Janie over here at Janie Sweets, and in this episode I'm coming at you with a tutorial on how I made this wood barrel cake with alcohol bottles at the top. So if you want to learn how I make this, keep on watching. So I'm starting out with an 8-inch chocolate cake that I have cut in 4 layers, and I have filled and crumb coated it with raspberry buttercream, and then I'm using chocolate buttercream to ice the cake smooth. I have a recipe for the buttercream that I used. I just made it into a chocolate version, but this is my Italian meringue buttercream, and I will leave a link to that video in the description box. So once I was done smoothing out the cake, I popped it into the refrigerator to set for a little bit, and then in the meantime I am going to start working on the panel. Now I'm using fondant with CMC or Tylose powder to make it harder, but you can use gum paste and it'll actually work a lot better because it'll set harder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out the fondant, and then I'm going to make wooden veins throughout the entire thing. You can use a skewer for that, but I had a fondant tool that I'm using, and it's really easy to do. You just kind of make organic looking lines to make it look like a plank or a wooden board. And then I'm using a measuring tape to make sure that I cut everything to size so that my boards are semi-uniform. And then I'm just going to lay everything out to dry overnight, or at least for a couple hours. Once I was done, I am going to roll out a little bit more of the fondant, and I'm going to cover my board with it because I want to bring that wooden design down to the board. So I just coated my board in Crisco, and then I'm just going to roll the fondant onto it. I'm also going to put the little vein designs all over it as well. I'm then going to add a piece of parchment paper that's the size of my cake on the middle of the board so that I can cut out the middle. Now because I have Crisco all the way down to the middle of the board, the fondant kind of stuck to it, so I just used the knife to kind of scrape it off because I wanted to be able to reuse that fondant. I'm then going to use just scrap fondant to roll out pretty thinly, and I'm going to cover the cake. Now the only reason why I'm doing this is so that the panels can stick to my cake, because if I stick the panels to buttercream, it's not going to adhere properly, and it's just going to slide off when the buttercream melts. So as you can tell, I'm not doing a good job covering the cake. It actually doesn't even reach the very bottom, and that's okay. All I want to do is to make sure that the fondant covers the top and then some of the sides so that the panels can stick to it. So I'm just going to use my pizza wheel to cut out all the excess. And then I'm going to spray the entire cake with water, very lightly with water. You could also brush it with water or brush it with gum paste or gum glue, and it'll work just as well. And then I'm just going to use my panels and then put them all over the side of the cake. Now you want to make sure that your panels go a little bit above the side of the cake. You don't want it flush to the top. So just go ahead and continue placing your panels until you are happy with how the cake turns out. And then what I'm going to do is using just Everclear, just any clear alcohol will do. You could use vodka or lemon extract, and you're going to use just brown food coloring and dilute it in the vodka or in the alcohol, and then just kind of brush all over the cake. You can also use an airbrush machine if you have one, but this just gives it a more of a wooden look as opposed to just a flat brown color that I had before. So continue doing that, and then once you're happy with that, I'm going to roll out a long piece of fondant in black, and then I'm going to flatten it out and then cut it in a half an inch or about an inch stick. Now if I had a strip cutter, this would go a lot faster and a lot neater, but I didn't really care that it would look weird. I wanted the cake to kind of have that like wooden barrel feel, so it didn't really need to be neat. So all I'm going to do is using some of that food coloring, I'm going to stick it onto the cake. Do not use water, because if you do, it's going to run, and then the color that you just put on the panels it's just gonna look weird. So don't use water. Make sure that you use either gum glue or the rest of the color that you used. And then I'm going to paint the strip in a darker black color, and then adding holes in it so it looks like screws onto it. Now I wanted to originally make the ice out of ISOMALT candy, but I burnt it. But I will find a cool video on how to make ISOMALT, actually the video that I was following, and you can make the ice more believable. But I just used marshmallow last minute because that's what I had on hand, and it worked just fine. And then you can just use any kind of bottles of alcohol that you want, just anything that's not too heavy that's going to put weight on the cake. And then once you are done, you can start working on your little tag. Now I just use the same black fondant, and I'm going to write 30 with gold luster dust. And then I'm going to stick it onto the front of the cake, because, well, I wrote 30 because the person I was making that cake for was celebrating his 30th birthday. So yeah, so just go ahead and do that, and then color the sides. And this is it, you guys. This is the final result. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Now you can make this the base of the cake, and then use whatever alcohol bottles that you choose, like I said. And also check out the description box for a link to how to make this ice look a little bit more believable and more realistic. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and families. And as always, you can check out my last video by clicking on this annotation right to your left. And I am on Instagram as well as on Facebook. All of my socials are at Janie Sweets. Subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss out on any of my future videos. So that is it for this week's tutorial, guys. I love you. I'll talk to you next time.